The most dangerous moment is not when Allah breaks you. It is when He raises you and your ego secretly starts loving the rank. So Allah may hide your light, remove the signs, and make you feel ordinary again. Not because you were rejected, because the next station cannot carry spiritual pride. If you are ready for this deeper lesson, write, "Only Allah is enough." Lesson 1. After Allah chooses you, He destroys the one who wanted to be chosen. The hardest part of being chosen is not the pain that comes before it. The hardest part is what Allah removes after it. At first, a person may feel different, more awake, more serious, more drawn toward Allah. They may begin to feel that their life has a special purpose. And this feeling can be beautiful, but it can also become dangerous, because the ego can enter even the spiritual path. It can quietly say, "I am different now. I understand more. I have been chosen for something greater." This is where the deeper test begins. Allah does not only want to change your life, He wants to remove the part of you that wants to own the change. So He may stop giving you the feelings that once made you feel special. The strong signs may disappear. The spiritual excitement may become quiet. The certainty you once felt may become harder to touch. And suddenly you begin to wonder, what happened to me? But perhaps nothing went wrong. Perhaps Allah is taking you deeper, because the servant who truly belongs to Allah does not need to keep saying, "I am chosen." He does not need to feel higher than others. He does not need a special identity to stay close to his Lord. This is the hidden death of the ego. You are no longer following Allah because you feel important. You follow because He is Allah. You no longer serve because the journey makes you feel special. You serve because you are His servant. And this is where a rare rank begins. The person who wanted to be chosen starts disappearing. The need to be seen disappears. The hunger to feel spiritually important becomes weaker. And what remains is something much purer. A servant who wants Allah more than he wants a title, a sign, a rank, or a story about himself. Lesson 2. The next rank opens when Allah hides your light even from you. There comes a point when Allah may stop letting you see the very light He placed inside you. This can be frightening. You may still pray, you may still try, you may still turn back to Allah, but the strong feelings are gone, the sweetness is weaker, the signs feel silent. The confidence you once had starts to disappear, and you may think, maybe I lost everything. But sometimes this is not loss. Sometimes this is training, because as long as you can see your own light, the ego can still become attached to it. It can say, "Look how far I have come. Look how strong my faith is. Look how much I understand." So Allah may hide your progress from you, not to destroy you, but to protect you from worshipping the image of who you think you have become. This is a much harder rank. You keep walking even when you cannot see yourself growing. You keep serving even when you do not feel special. You keep making dua even when your heart feels dry. You keep choosing Allah even when there is no emotional reward. That is where sincerity becomes real. Anyone can love the path when the path feels full of light. But who are you when the light becomes hidden? Who are you when you no longer feel advanced? Who are you when your heart says nothing, but your duty still remains? This is where many people turn back. But the deeper servant keeps going. He no longer needs proof that he is close. He no longer needs to feel powerful. He no longer needs to see his rank. And that is exactly why he may be ready for a higher one. Sometimes Allah hides your light because the next station cannot be entered by someone who is still looking at himself. You thought the darkness meant you were falling, but perhaps Allah was removing your ability to admire your own rise. Lesson 3. You cannot enter the hidden station while still admiring the person you became. One of the most dangerous moments in a spiritual journey is when you begin to like the person you have become too much. You may become calmer, wiser, more patient, more disciplined. You may leave old habits behind. You may begin to understand things that once confused you. And quietly, something can happen inside. You start admiring yourself. Not openly, but deep inside, you begin to think, "I am not like before." Then it becomes, "I am not like other people." And this is where the hidden danger begins. Because the ego does not always come wearing pride. Sometimes it comes wearing growth. Sometimes it hides inside wisdom. Sometimes it hides inside worship. Sometimes it hides inside the feeling that you have become spiritually better than others. This is why the hidden station cannot be entered by someone who is still fascinated by his own transformation. Allah may let you see your weakness again. He may allow an old fear to return. He may let you feel confused after a season of clarity. He may place you in situations that expose how much of the old self is still alive. And this can hurt, because you thought you had already become someone stronger. But the purpose is not humiliation. The purpose is purification. Allah is teaching you that even your growth does not belong to you. Your patience is from Him. Your understanding is from Him. Your strength is from Him. Your progress is from Him. So what is left for the ego to claim? The deeper rank begins when you stop being impressed by yourself. You stop collecting proof of how much you have changed. You stop comparing your inner life with other people. You become more grateful and less proud, more careful and less certain of your own greatness. The servant who reaches this point no longer says, "Look what I became." He says, "Look how much Allah carried me." And that is when the door to the hidden station begins to open. Lesson 4. The higher station cannot carry the ego that reached the lower one. The version of you that reached one spiritual level may not be able to enter the next one. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. The habits, confidence, knowledge, and identity that helped you rise before can later become a weight, because every station has its own test. At one level, you may need strength. At another, you may need surrender. At one level, you may need certainty. At another, you may need to walk without seeing. At one level, you may need to build yourself. At another, Allah may ask you to stop holding so tightly to the self you built. This is why some people feel strange after growing. They think, why is everything becoming difficult again? Why do I feel weaker? Why is the old confidence disappearing? Because perhaps Allah is not sending you backward. Perhaps He is removing what cannot travel with you anymore. The ego that reached the lower station may have learned how to survive there. It may have learned how to look humble, how to speak wisely, how to feel spiritual, how to enjoy being seen as a good person. But the next rank exposes all of that. At a higher station, even hidden pride becomes heavy. Even the need to be respected becomes heavy. Even the need to understand everything becomes heavy. Even the need to feel close becomes heavy. So Allah begins to empty you. He breaks the old supports. He removes the spiritual image you trusted. He teaches you to stand before Him with less confidence in yourself and more dependence on Him. This can feel like weakness, but it may be a deeper strength, because the higher servant is not the one who carries the biggest image of himself. He is the one who can carry the least. Less ego, less pride, less need to be seen, less need to know his rank. The next station does not need a bigger version of you. It may need a quieter one, a smaller one, a servant who has stopped trying to rise in his own eyes. And when that old ego becomes too heavy to carry, Allah begins to remove it. Lesson 5. Allah may remove every sign of nearness before raising your station. There are seasons when closeness to Allah feels almost impossible to miss. Your heart feels soft. Prayer feels different. A verse reaches you at exactly the right moment. A dua brings tears before you even finish the words. You notice meanings everywhere. You feel guided, protected, pulled towards something deeper. And because these moments are beautiful, the heart can become attached to them. Without realizing it, you can begin measuring your relationship with Allah by what you feel. If you feel peace, you think you are close. If you feel light, you think Allah is pleased with you. If your dua feels powerful, you think you are moving forward. Then one day, everything changes. The sweetness becomes quiet. The signs stop appearing. Prayer feels ordinary. The tears do not come. The certainty you once carried becomes harder to find. You call upon Allah, but your heart does not respond in the same way. And this can become one of the most painful tests of the spiritual path. You may ask, did Allah move away from me? Did I lose my station? Did I do something wrong? Why can I no longer feel what I felt before? But there is another possibility. Perhaps Allah is teaching you not to worship the signs of His nearness. Perhaps He is teaching you to worship Him. There is a difference. At the beginning of the journey, Allah may give the heart sweetness so it learns to walk. But a deeper servant must eventually learn to walk because Allah deserves obedience, even when the road gives him nothing back emotionally. This is a much stronger kind of faith. Imagine someone who only remains loyal when he constantly receives reassurance. He may love the reassurance more than the relationship. In the same way, a servant can become attached to spiritual feelings. He begins seeking tears, seeking signs, seeking unusual experiences, seeking moments that make him feel close. And slowly, the feeling of closeness becomes more important than closeness itself. So Allah may remove the feeling, not because He has abandoned the servant, but because the servant must discover something greater than feeling, faithfulness without emotional payment. You pray because He is worthy of prayer. You remember Him because He is your Lord. You obey when your heart feels full, and you obey when your heart feels empty. You return when the door feels open, and you return when you cannot feel the door at all. This is where the spiritual journey becomes serious. A beginner may say, "I worship because I feel Allah near me." A deeper servant learns to say, "Even when I cannot feel anything, I know who my Lord is." That difference is enormous, and this may be why Allah sometimes allows the road to become dark before a higher station. He is removing your dependence on spiritual evidence, because if you constantly need proof that you are progressing, part of you is still looking at yourself. How far have I reached? What is my rank? Why am I not feeling what I used to feel? Notice where the attention has gone. Back to you, your feelings, your progress, your station, your experience. But the path was never meant to end with you watching yourself become spiritual. It was meant to turn your attention toward Allah, so He may take away everything that helped you admire your journey. Then He watches what remains. Will you still pray? Will you still be kind? Will you still avoid what is wrong? Will you still serve people when nobody sees it? Will you still make dua when there is no immediate comfort? Will you still trust Allah when your inner world gives you no sign that anything is changing? This is where sincerity is tested. Anyone can continue when every step feels rewarded, but the hidden servant continues when the reward is hidden, and something powerful begins to happen. You stop demanding spiritual experiences. You stop trying to force tears. You stop chasing signs everywhere. You become quieter, more steady, more real. You begin to understand that Allah is still Allah, whether your heart is trembling with sweetness or struggling through dryness. And perhaps that is exactly the maturity the next station requires. The strange truth is this: sometimes the disappearance of signs is itself part of the guidance. You thought you were being left behind, but Allah may have been removing the training wheels. You thought the light had disappeared, but perhaps He was teaching you to walk toward Him without needing to see yourself glowing. And when a servant can remain faithful without constantly being reassured that he is special, he becomes ready for something deeper, because now he is no longer following the signs, he is following the one who sent them. Lesson 6. The last veil is the servant who secretly loves his own rank. A person can give up money, he can give up praise, he can leave bad habits, he can walk away from people who feed his ego, he can become disciplined, humble, patient, and deeply devoted, and still carry one hidden desire that is extremely difficult to see, the desire to be spiritually important. This desire does not always speak loudly. It may never say, "I want people to think I am holy." It can be much more subtle. It whispers, "I wonder how close I am to Allah. Maybe I have reached a special station. Perhaps these tests mean I am chosen. Maybe I am different from ordinary people." And because these thoughts are connected to religion and spirituality, they can feel innocent. But this may be one of the final places where the ego hides. The ego does not care what throne it sits on. It only wants a throne. If it cannot become proud of wealth, it may become proud of knowledge. If it cannot become proud of beauty, it may become proud of discipline. If it cannot become proud of worldly success, it may become proud of worship. And if all of those doors are closed, it may become proud of being humble. That is how subtle the nafs can become. It can survive inside the very thing that was supposed to destroy it. This is why the desire for rank can become such a dangerous veil. You may stop wanting the world to admire you, but secretly begin wanting heaven to confirm that you are special. You may stop asking people for attention, but begin searching every difficulty for evidence that Allah has selected you for something rare. You may stop comparing possessions, yet begin comparing spiritual depth. My trials are deeper. My understanding is different. My journey is unusual. And once again, the ego has found a way to stand in the center. The true spiritual path eventually attacks even this. Allah may allow you to reach a point where you no longer know what you are. Not high, not low, not special, not forgotten, just a servant. This can feel terrifying to the ego. Because the ego wants a name, it wants a position, it wants something it can hold and say, "This is who I have become." But the deepest servanthood may begin when you stop needing to know. You no longer ask, "What station have I reached?" You ask, "What does Allah require from me today?" That is a completely different heart. One is looking in a spiritual mirror. The other is looking toward its responsibility. This is why a servant who is truly growing may become less interested in his own greatness. He becomes more aware of his weakness, more aware of how easily he could fall without Allah, more aware of how much mercy has carried him. He does not become hopeless. He becomes sober. He stops turning every blessing into evidence of his rank. He stops turning every trial into proof that he must be chosen. He stops needing his life to be a grand spiritual story. He simply wants to remain truthful with Allah. That simplicity is extremely powerful, because once you no longer need to be spiritually important, many things lose their power over you. Praise cannot feed you as easily. Criticism cannot destroy you as easily. Being noticed does not excite you as much. Being ignored does not wound you as deeply. Someone else's spiritual success does not threaten you. Someone else's knowledge does not make you feel smaller. Why? Because you are no longer competing for invisible rank. You are serving. And the servant understands something the ego hates. The rank belongs to Allah to decide. You do not need to know it. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to protect it. You do not even need to feel it. Your responsibility is not to become fascinated with where you stand. Your responsibility is to stand correctly before Allah. There is freedom in this. A person obsessed with rank must constantly check himself. Am I progressing? Am I losing something? Why did I feel more spiritual yesterday? Why did that person receive something I did not? His journey becomes exhausting because he is always measuring himself. But the servant who lets go of rank can breathe. He prays and leaves the result with Allah. He serves and forgets the deed. He helps and does not build an identity from helping. He learns and does not need to become the knowledgeable one. He suffers and does not turn suffering into a crown. This is rare because the human self wants to collect identities from everything, even pain, even worship, even sacrifice, even spiritual awakening. But the higher path begins removing those identities one by one, until perhaps the servant reaches a terrifyingly beautiful place. He no longer needs to be known as chosen. He only wants to be accepted. He no longer needs to feel high. He only asks not to be separated from Allah. He no longer asks, "What rank am I?" He asks, "Am I sincere right now?" And that question protects the heart, because the greatest danger may not be failing to reach a high station. The greater danger may be reaching something good and then falling in love with the person you believe has reached it. That person becomes the veil. Your own spiritual image begins standing between you and Allah, so the final purification is severe. The servant must stop worshipping his own becoming. No title, no secret greatness, no fascination with being rare, only servanthood. And perhaps this is why the truly elevated servant often feels no need to call himself elevated. He is too busy looking toward Allah to keep looking back at his own rank. Lesson 7. The true wali becomes smaller in his own eyes as his station rises. One of the strangest signs of real spiritual growth is this: the higher a servant rises, the less impressed he becomes with himself. At the beginning, growth can make a person feel stronger. He learns more. He controls his anger better. He becomes more disciplined. He understands things that once confused him. He begins leaving sins that once controlled him, and naturally, he notices the change. But if Allah takes him deeper, something unexpected begins to happen. Instead of seeing how great he has become, he begins seeing how much he still depends on Allah. He becomes more aware of his weakness, more aware of his hidden faults, more aware of the mistakes inside his intentions, more aware of how easily everything could collapse if Allah stopped supporting him. This does not make him hate himself, it makes him humble. There is a huge difference. False humility says, I am worthless. Real humility says, whatever good exists in me was never mine to begin with. That understanding changes everything. The servant no longer looks at his patience and says, I became patient. He thinks, Allah gave me enough strength to remain patient. He does not look at his knowledge and think, I understand what others cannot. He thinks, Allah allowed me to understand something I could never have reached alone. He does not look at his worship and become proud. He becomes afraid of how much mercy was required just to make that worship possible. This is why a truly elevated person may appear ordinary. He does not constantly speak about his depth. He does not need everyone to know how much he has suffered. He does not use spiritual language to make himself look mysterious. He does not announce that he has reached a hidden station. Why would he? The closer he comes to Allah, the more he realizes how small the servant really is. A mountain looks enormous when you are standing far away, but when the sky opens above it, even the mountain looks small. Something similar happens inside the heart. The more a servant becomes aware of Allah's greatness, the less space his own greatness occupies. His ego loses size, his self-image loses weight, the need to impress disappears, and this is where something beautiful begins. He becomes easier to correct. A proud person hears advice as an attack. A humble servant hears advice and asks, is there truth in this? A proud person needs to win every argument. A humble servant can remain silent when winning would only feed his ego. A proud person wants people to recognize his goodness. A humble servant fears becoming attached to recognition. The higher servant does not become weak. He becomes free from the need to appear strong. That is a different kind of power. He can admit, I do not know. He can say, I was wrong. He can apologize without feeling destroyed. He can let another person receive praise. He can work without needing his name attached. He can disappear from a room and still feel complete. Why? Because his worth is no longer being built in the eyes of people. Even more importantly, he is no longer building his worth in his own imagination. This is where the idea of the wali becomes very different from the fantasy people often carry. People may imagine the wali as someone who feels spiritually powerful all the time, someone who knows he is special, someone who walks through life aware of his hidden rank. But the deeper image is almost the opposite. The servant may feel more dependent than ever, more careful than ever, more afraid of his own ego than ever, because he has seen what the ego can do. He has watched pride enter through good deeds. He has watched the desire for praise enter through service. He has watched self-love hide inside religious language, so he stops trusting the image he has of himself. He trusts Allah more. This is why his station can rise while he becomes smaller in his own eyes. The world may see wisdom. He sees mercy. The world may see strength. He remembers the nights he nearly broke. The world may see discipline. He remembers how many times Allah rescued him from himself. The world may see a servant standing. He remembers who kept him from falling. That memory protects him. Because one of the greatest dangers of spiritual growth is forgetting the one who made the growth possible. The ego loves to rewrite the story. It says, you became this because you were strong. But the humble servant remembers the truth. There were doors he could not open, habits he could not break alone, pain he could not survive by his own power, guidance he could never manufacture. And when he remembers that, pride becomes difficult to carry. He may achieve more and speak less. He may understand more and judge less. He may become stronger and become gentler. He may be respected by people and still feel no need to stand above them. This is not weakness. This is evidence that the self is no longer demanding the throne. And perhaps this is one of the clearest marks of the deeper rank. You stop asking, how high have I risen? You begin asking, how much of myself still stands between me and Allah? That question changes the path, because every time the ego tries to become large, the servant brings it back down. Every time praise enters the heart, he returns the praise to Allah. Every time he feels spiritually important, he remembers his dependence, and slowly, the person becomes lighter, less full of himself, less interested in being seen, less frightened of being ordinary. This is the hidden beauty. The closer the servant comes to true greatness, the less he needs greatness to belong to him. His station may rise, but inside himself he kneels lower, and that is why the true wali does not need to feel enormous. He has discovered something far greater than himself. Lesson 8. The gifts disappear so the giver becomes enough. At the beginning of a spiritual journey, Allah may give the servant many gifts: peace after prayer, tears during dua, a heart that feels alive, strong hope, clear signs, moments of deep understanding, a strange strength during pain, doors opening at the right time, answers arriving when they are needed most. These gifts can be beautiful. They can pull a person away from distraction and make him turn toward Allah with his whole heart. But there is a hidden danger. The servant can begin loving the gifts more than the giver. He may not realize it. He thinks he is seeking Allah, but what he is actually seeking is the feeling Allah gave him. He wants the peace, the tears, the certainty, the spiritual sweetness, the strange moments that make him feel protected. And then one day, Allah may remove them, not all at once, sometimes slowly. Prayer becomes quieter, dua feels heavier, the tears stop coming, the powerful emotional moments disappear. The answers do not arrive in the same way. The heart feels ordinary, and suddenly the servant becomes afraid. Where did everything go? Why do I not feel what I used to feel? Did Allah reject me? This is where the deeper test begins, because now a hidden question is placed before the heart. Did you love Allah, or did you love what Allah made you feel? That question is not easy. The servant may discover that much of his spiritual energy came from reward. He prayed because prayer gave peace. He remembered Allah because remembrance gave comfort. He made dua because dua made him feel close. But what happens when the reward becomes hidden? Will he still come? This is where love is purified. Imagine someone who says he loves you, but only when you are giving him gifts. Take the gifts away, and he disappears. Would you call that love? The spiritual path can expose the same thing inside us. Allah may remove sweetness so the servant learns something higher than sweetness, loyalty. You continue even when there is nothing emotional to hold. You pray without needing to feel powerful. You make dua without demanding a sign. You obey without waiting for a special experience. You stay because Allah is still Allah. This is a deeper rank. The gift was never the destination. It was an invitation. It brought you to the door. But eventually the servant must stop staring at what was placed in his hands and begin looking toward the one who gave it. This is why the disappearance of spiritual gifts can feel like loss while actually becoming purification. The heart is being emptied of dependence, not dependence on Allah. Dependence on spiritual reward. That distinction matters. The mature servant does not say, I only know Allah is near when I feel peaceful. He learns to say, even when my heart is tired, Allah is still my Lord. He does not say, I will worship when worship feels sweet again. He worships because worship is not a transaction. He stops bargaining. I will obey if you comfort me. I will trust if you show me a sign. I will continue if I understand the reason. The deeper path breaks these conditions, and at first it can feel severe. Because the ego likes payment, even spiritual payment. It wants every act to produce a feeling, every prayer to produce peace, every sacrifice to produce meaning, every hardship to produce a visible lesson. But life does not always work that way. Sometimes the servant must obey inside mystery. Sometimes he must trust without explanation. Sometimes he must remain faithful while the heart receives nothing but silence. And this is where a rare kind of love appears. You stop saying, give me the feeling I had before. You begin saying, even without the feeling, I will remain. That is powerful, because now your relationship is no longer built on constant emotional proof. It has roots. A tree with shallow roots looks strong during good weather, but the storm reveals what was underneath. Spiritual dryness can do the same thing. When sweetness disappears, what remains? Habit, fear, anger, or devotion? The servant who stays begins discovering a new type of peace, not the exciting peace of sudden spiritual emotion, a quieter peace, a peace that does not need to shake the heart to be real, a peace that says, "I do not understand this season, but I know whom I belong to." That sentence carries enormous strength, because the servant is no longer controlling the relationship, he is surrendering to it, and something else changes. He stops chasing strange experiences. He no longer needs every dream to mean something. He stops searching every event for secret proof that he is special. He becomes less hungry for signs, less addicted to emotional highs, less frightened by emotional lows. His faith becomes steadier. This is important because spiritual excitement can rise and fall. Feelings change, energy changes, life changes. But Allah does not become less worthy because the servant feels less. This is the lesson. The giver is greater than the gift. The one who gave you peace is greater than the peace. The one who gave you tears is greater than the tears. The one who gave you understanding is greater than understanding. The one who opened the door is greater than the door. And sometimes Allah allows the gift to disappear, so this truth moves from the tongue into the heart. At first, you miss what was taken. Then slowly you understand why it was taken. You become less attached to the experience and more attached to Allah Himself. This does not mean you stop appreciating blessings. It means you stop making blessings the condition for devotion. If sweetness returns, you are grateful. If it does not, you remain. If the heart feels light, you worship. If the heart feels heavy, you worship. If Allah opens a door, you thank Him. If the door remains closed, you still trust Him. That is a stronger servant, not because he feels more, because he requires less. And perhaps this is why some gifts must disappear before the hidden rank opens. As long as the servant needs something from Allah in order to stay with Allah, part of the relationship is still tied to the gift. But when the gifts become quiet and the servant remains, something pure is revealed. He did not come only for the peace. He did not come only for the signs. He did not come only for relief. He came for Allah. And when the giver finally becomes enough, the servant discovers that he never truly lost what mattered most. Lesson 9. The rarest station leaves no one inside you to claim it. There is a strange point in the spiritual journey where even the desire to arrive must disappear. At first, the servant wants to become better. Then he wants to become closer to Allah. Then he wants to become sincere. Then, without noticing it, he may begin wanting to become someone who has reached something rare. This is where the final danger can hide. The ego has changed its clothes. It no longer says, "I want the world." Now it says, "I want the highest station." It no longer asks for applause. It asks for spiritual importance. It no longer wants to be richer than others. It wants to be deeper than others. And this can be much harder to detect because it sounds beautiful. It sounds religious. It sounds like longing for Allah. But sometimes, hidden inside that longing, there is still someone waiting to say, "I reached it." That I is the problem. The rarest station cannot become another trophy for the ego. It cannot become another identity you carry. It cannot become another reason to look at yourself and feel different from everyone else. So the path becomes sharper. Allah begins removing not only your pride, but your ownership of the journey. You stop feeling that your progress belongs to you. You stop feeling that your understanding belongs to you. You stop feeling that your strength belongs to you. You begin to see that every step was carried by mercy. Every return after failure was mercy. Every moment of clarity was mercy. Every door that closed was mercy. Every door that opened was mercy. Even the strength you used to survive what almost broke you was not something you created alone. And when this understanding becomes deep, something inside begins to fall silent. The one who wanted credit, the one who wanted a title, the one who wanted to be known as awakened, the one who wanted to secretly believe he had gone farther than others. This is not the destruction of your personality, it is the destruction of your claim. There is a difference. You still live, you still work, you still pray, you still love, you still make choices, but you no longer stand over your own life saying, "Look what I have become." You begin to see yourself as a servant passing through a path that never belonged to him in the first place. That changes everything. If something beautiful happens through you, you do not immediately build an identity around it. If someone benefits from your words, you do not need to become the guide. If people respect your character, you do not need to become the righteous one. If you survive a difficult test, you do not turn your pain into a crown. You let the moment pass, you thank Allah, and you continue. This is rare because the ego loves to collect. It collects money, it collects attention, it collects achievements, and when a person leaves the world behind, the ego may begin collecting spiritual achievements instead. How many nights you prayed, how much pain you survived, how disciplined you became, how much you gave up, how different your heart feels. The collection changes, the collector remains. So the deeper path does something severe. It empties the hands, not only of worldly attachment, but of spiritual ownership. You may begin to feel that even your best deeds are not something to admire. You become more concerned with whether they were accepted than whether they looked impressive. You stop replaying your goodness in your mind. You stop needing to remember every sacrifice. You stop using your past obedience to prove something about yourself, and something beautiful happens. Your worship becomes lighter, not weaker, lighter, because you are no longer carrying yourself inside every act. You pray without constantly watching yourself pray. You help without constantly watching yourself help. You forgive without constantly reminding yourself that you were the one who forgave. You sacrifice without turning the sacrifice into your identity. The act becomes cleaner because there is less you standing in the middle. This is the hidden meaning of disappearing from the claim. The servant remains, the claim disappears. You no longer need to be the hero of your spiritual story. You no longer need every hardship to prove you are chosen. You no longer need every blessing to prove you are favored. You no longer need every strange event to carry a secret message about your greatness. You become simple again. And simplicity after depth is powerful. At the beginning, a person may want complicated signs, hidden meanings, special experiences, secret knowledge, but the deeper servant may return to something far more basic. Obey, be truthful, be kind, repent, serve, trust, continue. This may look ordinary from the outside, but inwardly, something enormous has changed. The servant no longer needs to turn ordinary obedience into evidence of an extraordinary rank. He is content to be a servant. That is why the rarest station can be hidden, because the person living it may not be busy naming it. He may not know what rank Allah has written for him, and he may no longer need to know. This is where freedom begins. You do not need to defend a spiritual identity. You do not need to prove that your journey was special. You do not need to compare your path with another person's path. You can celebrate another person's goodness without feeling threatened. You can learn from someone younger than you. You can accept correction from someone less experienced. You can be ignored without feeling that your hidden greatness has been insulted. Why? Because there is less inside you that needs to be protected. The ego needs protection. The servant needs guidance. That is the difference. And the higher the path becomes, the more dangerous spiritual self-importance becomes. A person can survive being unknown, but can he survive being unknown after believing he was special? A person can survive being corrected, but can he survive being corrected after people started admiring him? A person can survive losing attention, but can he survive it after he secretly built an identity from being spiritually respected? These tests expose what still remains, and if Allah loves the servant, He may continue exposing it, not to humiliate him, to free him. Until the servant no longer needs to stand before Allah carrying a long list of reasons he deserves closeness, he comes empty, no title, no spiritual resume, no hidden crown, no demand to be recognized, only need, only dependence, only servanthood. This is why the rarest station leaves no one inside to claim it, because the moment you become obsessed with saying, "I have reached," you have brought the claimant back. And perhaps the deepest secret is that the person nearest to the hidden station may be the least interested in naming it. He is not trying to become rare. He is trying to remain true. He is not trying to feel chosen. He is trying to remain obedient. He is not asking, "How high am I?" He is asking, "What still needs to be purified?" And when the need to own the journey disappears, the heart becomes strangely spacious. There is less self to defend, less rank to protect, less image to maintain. What remains is a servant standing before Allah with empty hands, and empty hands can receive what proud hands could never carry. Lesson 10. Beyond being chosen, when only the true servant remains. At the beginning of the journey, being chosen sounds like the highest thing, to be guided, to be protected, to be pulled away from what was destroying you, to be given a heart that wants more than the world, to feel that your life has a purpose beyond what people can see. These things can awaken a person. They can change the direction of his entire life. But there is something beyond being chosen. Servanthood, pure servanthood, a place where the servant no longer needs the word chosen at all. This is where the journey becomes complete in a very different way. Because at first, chosen can still become an identity. It can make you feel separate, different, set apart. You may begin thinking your pain is different, your path is different, your purpose is different, your tests are signs that you are different. But the deeper path removes this obsession with being different. Allah brings the servant back to something simpler and greater. You belong to Him. That is enough. You do not need a dramatic title. You do not need to feel spiritually rare. You do not need to understand your position among other servants. You do not need to know whether your name is known in places you cannot see. You need to be truthful in the place where Allah has put you today. This is the rank beyond the excitement of being chosen. The chosen person may still be fascinated by what Allah is doing with him. The true servant becomes fascinated by Allah. That difference changes everything. One heart keeps asking, "What is happening to me? What am I becoming? What is my rank? Why was I given this test? What does this sign mean about my future?" The other heart slowly becomes quieter. It asks, "What does Allah want from me now?" That is a much deeper question, because the attention has moved away from the self, toward obedience, toward responsibility, toward surrender. This is where the true servant begins to appear. He does not need every season to make sense. If Allah gives, He serves. If Allah withholds, He serves. If people praise Him, He serves. If people misunderstand Him, He serves. If His heart feels full, He serves. If His heart feels dry, He serves. If He can see the wisdom, He is grateful. If the wisdom remains hidden, He remains. This is not emotional coldness, it is loyalty. The true servant is not loyal to a feeling, he is loyal to Allah. And that loyalty becomes stronger than his need to understand himself. This is one of the hardest things the ego can accept. The ego wants a story. It wants to know why everything happened. It wants to know what it means. It wants to know what comes next. It wants to see how every wound fits into some great destiny. But the servant may reach a place where even that hunger becomes quieter. He can say, "If Allah explains it, I am grateful. If He does not explain it, He is still my Lord." That is strength, because now understanding is no longer a condition for surrender, and something else begins to disappear. The need to control the spiritual journey. At first, the person may constantly examine himself. Am I progressing? Am I close? Am I falling? Is this a sign? Have I reached something? The true servant becomes less obsessed with measuring. He still checks his heart, he still repents, he still corrects himself, but he is no longer building a private kingdom out of spiritual self-analysis. He becomes practical. Did I pray with sincerity? Did I hurt someone? Did I speak truth? Did I control my anger? Did I return after failing? Did I serve when nobody saw? Did I protect my heart from pride? These questions matter more than imaginary rank, because the true servant understands that the highest title means nothing if the heart is false. And the simplest act can become enormous if it is sincere. This is why the final station may look less dramatic than the beginning. At the beginning there may be tears, signs, strong experiences, deep realizations, major changes, but later the path may become very quiet. You wake up, you pray, you work, you help people, you control your tongue, you forgive, you repent, you keep going. No thunder, no spiritual performance, no need to tell anyone, just steadiness. This quietness can be more powerful than all the excitement that came before, because now your faith does not need constant fire to stay alive. It has become part of who you are. The servant no longer needs to feel chosen every morning. He has accepted that belonging to Allah is greater than feeling special. This is where loneliness also changes. Before, being misunderstood may have hurt because you wanted people to recognize who you were becoming. Now, recognition matters less. You can be misunderstood and still remain gentle. You can be overlooked and still do good. You can be forgotten and still serve. You can lose the image people had of you without losing the direction of your heart. Why? Because the true servant does not live from people's recognition, and eventually, he does not even live from his own recognition. He does not need to wake up and tell himself, I am advanced. He simply wakes up and asks Allah for help. That may be one of the purest forms of spiritual maturity. Need without performance, love without claiming, service without identity, obedience without constant reward. The servant becomes less interested in becoming impressive and more interested in becoming acceptable. And there is a deep difference between those two things. To be impressive, you must be seen. To be accepted by Allah, you may remain completely hidden. To be impressive, you need people to notice the result. To be accepted, the intention may matter more than the result. To be impressive, you build an image. To be accepted, you may have to let the image die. That is why the rank after being chosen can feel like losing everything you thought being chosen would give you. The special identity disappears. The constant signs disappear. The need to know your rank disappears. The need to be admired disappears. The need to feel spiritually powerful disappears. And at first, this can feel empty. But then you discover what was hidden underneath all of it. Servanthood, simple, clean, strong. You belong to Allah. You obey because He is worthy. You return because you need Him. You love because He gave you the ability to love. You stand because He gave you strength to stand. And when you fall, you return because His mercy is greater than your failure. This is the final reversal. At first, you wanted Allah to make you someone. At the deeper station, you no longer need to become someone in your own eyes. You only want to belong to Him correctly. That is when the true servant remains, not the person obsessed with being chosen, not the person searching for proof of his greatness, not the person trying to reach a hidden rank. Just the servant. And perhaps this is the rank few ever reach because very few people are willing to lose even the beautiful spiritual identity they spent years building. Many can leave the world, fewer can leave their pride, fewer still can leave their spiritual pride. But the servant who keeps walking may eventually understand the greatest thing Allah could give you was never the feeling that you were chosen. It was the freedom to stop needing to be chosen in your own eyes, to serve without a crown, to love without a title, to obey without applause, to stand before Allah with nothing left to prove. And when nothing remains except true servanthood, the journey has moved beyond being chosen, because the servant no longer needs to know what rank comes next. Allah is enough. Ya Allah, purify our hearts from hidden pride, remove our need to feel special, and make us sincere servants who seek only you. Keep us humble when you raise us, patient when you hide the signs, and faithful in every station. Amin.